All right. Well, hey, everybody. I'm John Haney. I'm going to be talking about what's new from WWDC. Before I kind of really get started, I just want to kind of get a feel for everybody. So who has actually like coded in Swift? Cool. Okay, about half. Okay. And then who's like not a coder at all? Cool. Good. Okay, so I'm going to try and calibrate a little bit, but like there's stuff for everybody, like I said. Feel free to stop me, ask questions. Like there's no question that I'm unhappy to answer. So please, feel free. This will be kind of a shaped conversation based on what you guys are interested in. So a little bit more about me. I work at Lextech during the day, and then I have my own apps on Apps from Outer Space. These are just a couple of highlights. We had an App Store featured app on the Apple Vision Pro, the headset, and then I had one of the original flashlight apps on the App Store that was like the one on the top of the list for the first couple of years of the App Store. So amassed a ton of downloads, and then also launched this grammar snob thing several years back that was a viral tweet and got an App Store feature, and pretty cool stuff for me, but I can tell you those stories if you want to hear them sometime. This is the general agenda that I have. So a little bit overview of WWDC. We're going to sort of the user-facing stuff, the stuff that you'll see on an iPhone or Mac or whatever. Xcode, which is the tools to code in, and then that's some Apple Intelligence stuff, and then just kind of more general stuff, basically that's changed, or that's changing, and then kind of an emphasis on the spatial 3D stuff, and then Q&A, but like I said, anytime. So what is WWDC? These are actually the slides. If you saw my talk last year, I'm reusing the slides. It's the Worldwide Developer Conference from Apple. That is when they announce their next versions of their software that's going to come out. They have a keynote and a platform State of the Union that are the two events on the first day of this. So the keynote is kind of like for the public's consumption. The platform State of the Union is kind of for the developers' consumption. So they kind of launch the big features, brag about what's going to be coming on your devices, and then the platform State of the Union comes in and like cleans that up of like, okay, and here's what you need to do with your apps, and also here's a bunch of other developer stuff that the consumers don't necessarily care about. Just some terminology here. So like iPhone, iOS is what runs on that. iPad OS runs on that. These are basically the same, but they just split it off a little bit to say like there's some features that only run on the iPad, so they kind of started calling that iPad OS. But more or less, it's one thing. So all the last time I talked about it was iOS. Mac OS that runs on all the actual Macs, watchOS, tvOS, and visionOS. So everything's pretty straightforward mapping, but that's just how they delineate their terms. And the rest of these, I would say, are pretty much kind of have some of their own conventions of how you interact with the watch is different from the other stuff, for example. This is a slide I like to share of just kind of like the way I think about it with Apple around the year. So WWDC is early June, and so I kind of think about a year this way of hot beta summer. Right, we get all these betas. We're on beta 4 right now at the end of July. Probably beta 5's coming this week, if I remember the schedule right. And then they'll usually release everything around mid-September. And that's, they do a press announcement with new iPhones, usually new watches, and sometimes some other stuff. And then they'll that same day they'll announce like, and in 2 days the OS updates are going out. Go ahead and submit all your apps, all that stuff. One thing I learned this year: if you want to be considered to be try and get featured by Apple, which is always a high bar, but if you want to try and do that, you want to have your app like ready early August is when the teams are actually starting to look at apps. So you and I that just released our apps a week ago are in pretty good shape for that. Like if you think about doing some 27 features as an update, probably be a good idea to get those in sooner than later, have it in a test flight, share it to them and be like, hey, look, this is my 27 feature. Here's how I'm exploiting, all of those things. And like spam that nomination form and tell them about it.
On that though. I was messing around though with 27 beta.
Yeah.
And they won't allow you to even upload. Actually, they'll allow you to upload, but can you push a test flight though?
You can, yes, you can go to test flight. So there's a couple of quirks with that. Usually, if you're trying to do it the same day that a beta comes out, or right away when the next beta comes out, you might get blocked by some weird messages. If you watch some of the feeds and things, they'll be like, oh, and there's a new version of test flight that came out, and it's the next day or two. So there's a little bit of a window every time they launch a new beta out, where you won't be able to go to test flight if you're using the latest beta, but you can do it after that test flight update happens. So that might be what you're tripping up on.
Yeah, well, I think maybe I'm confused, but maybe I'm trying to submit it to the App Store actually.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you definitely can't drop it into the normal, so there's the website that you use when you're managing your apps. It's called App Store Connect. And so it has these, each app, you go into an app and there's a tab for the App Store listing and that page, and you fill out all the stuff of here's my screenshots and here's all the stuff. If you drop a beta app onto that to be like, hey, this is what I'm gonna use for 2.0, it's gonna complain about it now. So that'll be that September when you'll be able to do that. But if you go to the test flight tab, you can see all the builds that you've pushed up to the App Store, and you should be able to export them for App Store, and then they'll show up in that test flight builds tab in App Store Connect, and then you should be able to work with them from there.
So how do you actually submit it for? I'm sorry,
no, you're good.
So then how do you submit it to Apple for potential pilot?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what. Let's just go there. Let me pull up. Yeah, the short version is yes. There's a nomination form that you fill out, and I'll point that out to you for sure. So yeah. Okay. Cool. Test flight is how you distribute beta versions of your app, and then if you haven't experienced that before, from a tester's perspective, they get a link and then they install an app called Test Flight, and it basically operates like another app store. So it lets you manage your beta versions, your non-released app store versions of apps that you're trying out, and then you can agree to test them, and you can share links for that, or you can just collect emails and add people individually. Either way, but that's what Test Flight is. So, cool. Okay, so iPhone releases some stuff come out. That's when OS 27, the next version of everything, is going to drop for all of those. I kind of think of it as winter of upgrades. It's there'll be 27.1, 27.2 that comes out. And then we get into the spring where sort of stuff seems to settle a little bit. Although this year, they dropped in March or April a pretty substantial update to Xcode, where they first added the ability to do AI coding within Xcode, and gave it an MCP server so that you could actually connect up an AI to drive Xcode and work with those tools. That's been beefed up even more with 27, but that was kind of a surprise in timing. Usually this is more of a quiet period in the Apple world, but I think that's also just them ramping up some things with how their AI story is starting to roll out in more. And then also, I think this year we're going to have a split between iPhone Pro versions coming out in September and the sort of standard, the SE, sort of lower budget, kind of last couple of years model, and maybe even just the base iPhone is what the rumors are saying. So maybe sort of 2 drops of iPhones that happen. Okay. On to user-facing features in 27. So Siri AI and Siri app were kind of the big headliner story of WWDC. They had this, which I think is kind of interesting. It's wrap around the user and their devices, and then the foundation models that can take in image or voice or text. The system orchestrator, that is how they get your personal context, so they know what you've been doing recently in apps and locations and people that you've been talking to and whatever, all on the device. World knowledge, just what an LLM is trained to do, right? Know about the world, but also look on the web. Different actions that apps provide, and then on-screen awareness. So on-screen awareness was kind of a promise of last year, and then they're beefing that up a little bit more this year, to where they've been, for every time Apple kind of has a big pivot, there's like every year at WWDC, there's like a certain thing they're kind of harping on, and it's been app intense every year for the last 4 or 5 years. So anyway, I'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, that's the, like, it understands what the phone is showing you, and it understands, like, has a sort of an X-ray into what things mean, so that you can talk in a more natural way of like, hey, these 4 albums, or like, play this music, or look at this person, and it kind of understands what that means in the context of your app, because it's got that extra metadata to go with. And then around the whole thing is kind of Siri AI and your apps using some of that. Yeah. All right. So some other big user features: photos. In the Photos app, they're applying AI, so you can actually extend a photo, add more contents to the surroundings of it. One of the things that I think that's a natural fit for is like turning something into a background or a phone background. Like if you crop a photo in too much or whatever in different aspect ratio, like you can kind of get back to something that makes more sense. But obviously lots of use cases for that. The reframe is interesting. It's actually turning that photo into 3D using Gaussian splats, and then you can like reposition the camera, essentially, so you can get a little bit of a different angle on things. And I've got a couple examples of that, or I can run a phone demo if I want to play around with that later. And then the cleanup tool is just even more. They already had this last year with being able to erase people or objects or whatever, but better image understanding and better capabilities on that. Image Playground is now hooked up to more advanced models on the back end, so it's got a better an ability to make like actually photoreal things, and it's been really interesting. I've been playing around with that a lot. Safari has a couple of features. This idea of topic grouping, so if you have a bunch of tabs open, you can turn on this feature and then it'll show them as topics. So like I've got one that formed with Apple Developer as the topic group, right? Because I had 3 different tabs that were various Apple Developer related things. And then this Notify Me, which is interesting. You can set up a schedule to check a web page hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, to look for certain content. So you type in like, hey, if you see this pop up, like, hey, I can order tickets now or whatever. You could set it for that. So I'm actually going to experiment with that when I was preparing this talk, because when I have a check like a certain time of day to see if there's a new beta out, because it seems like Apple usually drops those around the same time on Mondays. So I'll try that out and see if that'll notify me. See if I catch it first, since I have to pick a certain time. Automatic captions with translations, kind of cool. Like, so you're watching a video, it can do automatic captions, and there's, I might have this wrong, but several different languages. I want to say 29, but I might have that from a different part of the features, but a large number of languages that are supported that I can translate to or from. Describing to making shortcuts. There's a shortcuts app on the iPhone that is, a little bit higher level of kind of a programmable way to do actions and script things together and kind of put together functions from multiple apps. and they're adding basically an AI-driven thing, so you can kind of describe what you want something to happen, and like, hey, use this app to query, find blah blah blah, and then use this app to filter those results by yesterday or whatever, and then blah blah blah. And so if you can describe it, then theoretically it'll build out those blocks for you. So pretty cool. I think Shortcuts is still definitely more of an advanced app, but it's neat to see them using it that way. And then Wallet, they have the ability to create a pass. So if you don't know, like if you've like double-clicked your phone, you get the like credit cards and other things, tickets and stuff. You can now take a photo of like a library card or something, and it will create a pass out of that for you. So that
Last year they've always been a pain.
yeah,
Also,
yeah. So I mean, I'm pretty excited about this because it's interesting to me. There's just any random gym or whatever. Like I almost was going to do a project for YMCA nearby me to like digitize their and I was like, oh, we could make passes, and this was like 8 years ago or whatever. So like they had just launched. It's like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of a whole thing. You got to set up a server and do the signing and all the blah blah blah. It's like, well, okay, now maybe they can just make it themselves. Cool. And then there's a pass designer thing which has some AI prompting stuff you can do. Liquid glass. So they launched a whole new styling of iPhone with 26, and this interface that they're calling language that they're calling liquid glass. They're adding to it now a clarity slider is what they're calling it. So basically, like when you install the update, you'll get one of the onboarding screens has a slider. It's like, okay, here's the middle ground. Do you want to go more transparent or do you want to go less transparent? And it's really as simple as that. I can show you a quick demo whenever we get to the Mac. And then some other refinements around that, but that's the biggest thing. The main thing is that there's essentially no work on the iPhone side, but it is required. So if you build with Xcode 27 and you're submitting the App Store for iOS 27, you have to be opted into this new design. There was a flag last year where you could say like, nope, I'm going to use the old design language. I'm not doing this liquid glass thing. This year you have to do it. So definitely something to look out for. CarPlay video when you're parked, so apps can support that and you can watch videos. iPad has a handwriting detection. Oh, there's the 29 number. Okay, so it might be the same, but I don't know. So as you're taking notes or whatever, it'll understand your handwriting and convert that into proper language words. Mac OS, some of the liquid glass, they kind of pulled back on. So they've done a couple of weird things, or I think weird things, a little bit of super rounded corners. And they kind of took that back a little bit. So it feels a little less like a kid version of the operating system in my mind, but they're trying to match the hardware. Like I get the idea, but it's like, yeah, it's chunky. Everything feels chunky. So they kind of just gave me my pixels back. So I feel good about that. The other big one is menu items in 26, macOS 26. You're basically like required to have icons with every single menu item. And they rolled that back now. So the default is no icons, but you can still add them if you want to. So, hey, you're fine. VisionOS, there's a whole bunch of stuff in VisionOS, so try not to talk too long. They have some curved windows in native apps. It's not available as an SDK, which I'm filing feedbacks to ask for. But they have like some curved window interfaces. They have certain views with Safari where you can have like kind of multiple windows lined up and kind of browse through those in a little more structured way. The panoramas, so if you have a panorama photo that you've taken, like even back to, I think they launched that with like iPhone 4, like way back in the day. Those always look really good on the Vision Pro, but now you can actually run a process and it converts them to 3D, and then can become environments that are available kind of system-wide. So then you can sort of be living in that panorama world as your environment instead of all the built-in ones.
So meaning that when you're designing an application, you can have a panorama photo that you've upgraded to be part of your programming, your client environment of that?
So yes, but this is the user-facing side of it.
Oh, okay.
So as a user of a Vision Pro, I can take my panoramas or panoramas I get from somewhere and turn those into a spatial environment, and then that's available. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then immersive web, it was a feature last year, but you had to go into the 5 layers of Safari settings to turn it on. And then for each page that actually happened to have one of these, then there was an icon that lit up and choose that, turn it on. And now you're in an immersive background environment. Now it's just on by default. And the web page designers that want to do this. So what an immersive environment is in Safari is I'm browsing the web, and you can supply one essentially USD file. You can give them one 3D model file, and then it will open that up as more of a spatial experience kind of behind the web page. And they can turn the crown, and then they can make that wrap 360 all the way around them. So then they're just in a particular world. One of my colleagues that I talk with in this Step into Vision group did one for Tron, and so it's like a grid space, and then has a couple of the kind of classic Tron things animated and moving around. And I guess last year you could do sound, and this year maybe you can't do sound, or he hasn't figured out how to get sound working yet. So anyway, but that's pretty cool and interesting. And looks like the web pages are in control of turning that on and turning that off. So you provide an enter and a leave button controls for that immersive space. But the user's in control. They can come out of it anytime. Yeah, anyway, that's cool stuff. Cloth materials is really kind of interesting and fun to play with. So it will apply a bunch of texturing and springs and stuff so that you get a fabric movement to materials, and then with that, I didn't list it on here, but there's some kind of a wind control component, so they can kind of combine that and have a flapping flag or whatever you want to do. So I've got a bunch of app ideas that I'm going to play with on that. And then lighting, I call it lighting on walls, but it's really like the space around you. So the Vision Pro is already mapping, it's got a bunch of LiDAR, and it's mapping the world around you and the walls and stuff. And then you can now project virtual light onto the walls and tables and stuff. So they showed it as a disco ball sort of style thing, or night sky light that's lighting up on all the walls and stuff around you. It's kind of cool. And you can do shadowing of real or virtual content too, and then all kinds of, there's a bunch of lighting stuff that they added that we didn't have before. Before it was you can have 4 or 8 spotlights, and that was pretty much it. So now they've upped that quite a bit. WatchOS access to Apple Intelligence, so you couldn't actually do Apple Intelligence language model stuff from the watch. It also happens to be the platform that got the biggest cut. I've got a slide on that in a minute. tvOS has dynamic type and a couple other features. I'm just kind of pulling out some highlights here. So you can basically get larger text on the TV. All right, Xcode. So please feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have questions you want to ask. Xcode 27, so I will do a demo here of some of this. But Xcode 27 is the environment that we use for coding apps for all the Apple platforms. So it's a whole IDE. There's a new feature now where you can make a new project and then it's just sort of living in Scratch space. So you can think of it as not being saved to your hard drive yet. It's just a good like mental shift because I can do that and then just play around with code and not kind of think of, the experience before that is you get a new window and it's like, oh, what kind of thing are you making? And there's like 30 things to choose from and 5 different tabs of like, is this multi-platform or iOS or VisionOS or any of those platforms? So you like had to like make this choice right away when maybe you just want to get into code and start playing with an idea. So
proof of concept kind of.
Yeah, then if you're just kicking something around, like okay, yeah, make a thing and like I don't care. Don't make me toggle all the switches yet. Just let's get into it. They have this device hub, which has replaced the simulator that they were doing. So this device hub now is managing your real connections to real devices and your connection and your simulators. So fake iPhones, fake Vision Pros, everything's in this one new app now to manage all of that. And then it has some new capabilities that go along with some of the new functionality in iOS, especially.
So does the device hub get rid of RocketSim then? Because RocketSim is a very popular simulator that connects to both your phone and simulators and gives you a bunch of analytics and stuff. Does the device hub give you a bunch of analytics?
I don't know. So I haven't used RocketSim, but I think there are still a lot of the command line tools. The like XC-Run simulator interface, I think, is still there with Device Hub. In my experience on this machine, because I only have Xcode 27 installed in this one that's running the betas. So I'm guessing that they would still be able to do most of the features that they have, but I don't know for sure. Since it's a new app, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some bumps along the way. Yeah. So it's definitely and I'll show you a little bit of that too. And then themes is one thing that they did. So it's like you can actually style up your windows and you can set a different theme for different projects, which is, especially now that I'm sometimes juggling between 3 or 4 different projects, like it's actually kind of nice. Like, okay, the blue one is whatever, and just like that extra visual reminder of.
Yeah, if not for Peacock and VS Code, I probably would have overwritten several servers in my time.
Yeah, definitely, right. Don't touch the red one.
Is that an extension?
Yeah, I have like the red one is actually the production server where I can see that.
Yeah, all the blinking lights. Right? All right, and then and this is some of the like Xcode 26-ish stuff, but there's installable skills, so you can actually run a command line and do a skill export from Xcode, and it'll give you the different skills around some of the things that they offer up to the agents that are running inside it. And then Xcode 27 will drive other language models. And there's kind of first-class treatment for Claude and ChatGPT or Codex, and then Gemini, I think, is in the mix on that too. So there's better, more interesting integrations that way, and then being able to pull those skills out, so then you can use that with your command line or other modes that you run, if you want to do that. But I would definitely recommend trying out in Xcode 27 using one of those plugins for your coding, because Xcode's actually the one driving. It's kind of like the first brain that's interpreting your request and it's driving everything. So it's does a lot better job at like knowing the context and using the latest techniques and understanding the right places for documentation to kind of point your language model that you're using a little bit better. Better steering. The trade-off for that, in my experience, is I burn through tokens faster when I do it in Xcode versus running a command line. So, kind of been still playing with both and trying to figure out what's the preferred. But
Sorry if you already mentioned this.
you're fine. I'm just going to queue up Xcode.
With the installable skills, what's the source they're installed from?
The skills are bundled with the Xcode.
Okay.
So yeah, I can show you those too.
No, I was just curious if it was like Apple provided or.
Yes, they're Apple provided.
The cool thing is, I mean, Xcode, more than any other thing I did, the models are super familiar with standard, like standard patterns in Swift stuff. Whereas some of the other stuff, they wander around a lot more. I've always seen that whenever you have a bug or anything like that, they know exactly kind of the structure of things much better.
Actually, let's do this. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm not going to reposition so I can see both. So this is Xcode 27. I can go into the theme stuff here. They've got a bunch of different colors and things I can pick from. There's Ember. And then you can kind of turn up how saturated you want the backgrounds to be, and maybe it's not showing as well on this background or on this screen, but there's like a gradient effect to it. It's kind of nice. I don't know. It's pleasant. I don't mind it. So let's see. While I'm here, or while I'm on. Just going to show you this. This is the liquid glass slider. So I have mine turned to maximum glass, maximum transparency, which they said in the keynote that that's even more translucent than it was whatever they shipped in 26. But I don't know, because it seems to me like there's a little more blur effect to. But that's the maximum kind of fuzziness. So it's fine. And then you can scroll down this to kind of get an idea of it in the real world. So yeah, that's that new piece. These corners were probably about double the radius, so they were very chunky. And then the sidebar would have been a floating sidebar. It would have been like set in by so many pixels, so it's kind of like, anyway. Enough about that. I'll stop complaining. I'm happy. So, yeah. So Xcode, and then when I do a model, I can do this plus up here, and it'll do a conversation. I happen to be using Claude, so let's see. What do I want to do with this code? Write a new tab. Let's see. Make a new. Tab, view, where this up. Showing, so while that's running, go into that actually.
So, do you know if Apple has some kind of built-in sandbox where Claude will only modify your current project or workspace?
So my experience, yeah, essentially yes. So Xcode offers certain tools to Claude or to any whatever agent, and those tools give them the ability to like add files, read files. Right, make changes within that project.
Yeah.
So that's a little more important on the Apple platforms because there's a central like project.pbxproj file that can be kind of a merge nightmare of sorts. So it's kind of good to have Xcode managing those changes when you add and remove files from project or assign them to different targets or platforms or whatever. Like letting Xcode do all that is really good.
Would you think they
But Claude has, in some of the runs, especially with the 26 versions of this, Claude would try and break out that sandbox pretty quickly for me. So it'd be like, hey, I want to make some files over here, and like, so it was just trying to do like terminal commands, and then you would get the like prompt from Xcode of like, hey, it wants to run this command, and you can just say no, and then it'll go back to the Xcode tools. But Claude will definitely not. Claude doesn't necessarily respect only using the Xcode tools. It will try to accomplish the tasks no matter what, in my experience. So it may do a bunch of stuff on the side, try and run some Python scripts or Bash scripts or whatever to like
do
a mass
trying
change.
to add any like OS level sandboxing? Like there might be something called like Apple Seatbelt or something that maybe like Chrome would use for sandboxing.
I'm not aware of that at the moment. So they have, there might be something related to containerization that they're doing, but I don't know as far as this or kind of limiting the AI specifically. I haven't seen anything on that
From
yet.
a Linux perspective, usually a lot of open source tools don't have any sandboxing, so you have to tell people, yes, run it you have to set up the container so it doesn't like accidentally wipe your hard drive kind of thing. But for Apple, if they might have some kind of OS level permissions they could enforce. I just wasn't sure if you knew if they were doing that for Xcode.
But the tool set that Xcode provides
is the sandboxing. So it's like if the agent is doing stuff through Xcode's interface, then it already is sandboxed.
Yeah.
So then if when you're running an agent and there's a pop-up that says like, hey, do you want to do this, right? That's because that agent is trying to do something that's outside of the Xcode sandbox. So you could just say no to everything, and then that would be staying in the sandbox, right? So it's okay to do that. You can just say no to everything.
Now, I guess it could technically create a script that did the breakout thing in the program and then run the program.
Oh, like actually write it into the Swift code.
Code it in Swift and then do it. You know. But that would be really like.
I would be surprised if Apple let that fly actually. And if you were doing an iPhone app, then that iPhone is running. I'd have to test that. The iPhone is running in a sandboxed way, but the simulator and device hub.
Right?
There's a chance that you could still break out into the rest of the operating system from the simulator.
Bring out a 0 day.
Yeah.
But of course, the point is.
I mean, it's a simulator, not an emulator, so like maybe. That's interesting.
Well, maybe Apple has some security documentation somewhere where people can read the fine print or something.
I would be really surprised to find out that Apple doesn't look for that kind of nefarious behavior and just like shut that down automatically. But you know, I'm not going to say that it is there.
It is an arms race.
Yeah.
They might be better than Google in that regard because, you know, like some of the Google anti-gravity stuff, just like zero sandboxing. You have to containerize it yourself. But
So
there's something.
one of the other, I mean, I'm a little bit getting ahead of myself, but one of the other things that I have, that's not right. Never mind. Okay. So sorry, this is a terrible demo. So this was a previous session that I ran. Normally you get like kind of a chat bubble, like an iMessage chat thing in this column back and forth. And then when there's code that's been run, it'll be referenced on the right here, and you can actually like see the changes that the AI has made. So it'll show you like green lines for stuff added and red lines for stuff taken away. So you can kind of like watch as it's going, and you can hit stop and be like, no, you're doing something. And like, no, it's over here or whatever. Like, you're thinking too hard. Let me help you. So it's Apple's definitely positioning all of this to be like, you're the one making the decisions. You're, it's trying to be kind of more against, or not, I wouldn't say against vibe coding, but trying to be like, hey, you're in charge, you're making the decisions, you're doing the right things, and then like let the AI do maybe the trivial work, or let it brainstorm 8 different views for you and show you some stuff, and then like you guide it and say like, I want a little bit of A and a little bit of D. So, okay, cool. All right. So we'll come back to some more of that with the AI stuff in a second. So Apple Intelligence and using AI. Oops, skip this slide. Okay. So the story in my mind is kind of like multiple different parts. So there's foundation models, which is how apps use language models. And that's their API, that's their coding platform you can work with for adding AI to your apps to have it do some reasoning live, like when the user is using your app. And then there's some different like reasoning on device stuff that Apple gave us. So there's actually an FM command line utility for foundation models, and you can run a chat session in that and use,
Does that include image model that I have?
That can take an image input, yep, yeah. So we can just play with that. So that one can run a couple different models. I'll get to that in a second. And then there's Siri, and so the way that I think about that one is like you're giving Siri that X-ray of your app. So that's where we get into some of this app intents and other stuff. And it's like I'm telling Siri about what my app is doing right now, and like what the data is, and sort of what it means, what those terms are, and then that makes Siri more powerful when it's using my app and referencing my app for the user's on the user's behalf, but then also referencing other apps, because then it can combine things and do cooler stuff across the platform. So foundation models. So there's this language model protocol, which is how kind of, and language model session is what you're creating and running around. So a session is, if you want to think about it like a chat window, like a session is one chat with a language model. New this year, there's dynamic profiles and things, so I can make one session, and then I can swap out the parts and the brains and what I'm talking to and what I'm using in that same session. So before you had to make a new session, and then it was on you to figure out like, okay, let me take that context and like, how do I put that in and stuff, and yeah. So it's really nice. The other thing about this being just a kind of simple protocol is I can have a foundation model session that uses a spectrum of different language models that all talk to it in the same code interface way. So even if I'm not doing that dynamic session, it's a dynamic profile, so it's that term. Then I can still just take that code and say, oh, you know what, we tried Claude or whatever, now we're going to try Codex, and now we're going to try some open weight model or whatever. I can just move everything around and not have to change one line on my code. So it's pretty cool. Prompts and responses, so it takes the text inputs, image inputs, you get text outputs back, or this generable thing, which is a way to get structured objects back out. Like, really under the hood, it's basically like prompting an AI language model and saying like, hey, I want this JSON, like give me JSON back, or like here's an example of JSON back. It's essentially doing all of that, but just Apple's a little bit more efficient with it. So it has all the same potential constraints of like, you're gonna use up some of the context window. So if you're doing the on-device model, you don't necessarily want to do humongous structures. You want to kind of try and keep that stuff small if you can. But it packages up in a really nice way. So it's like, hey, I've got this model object that I defined in my code. I can just slap this general tag on top of it, and like, now I can have that as an output, or I can ask it for an array of these things. Buyer beware, your mileage may vary, all of that stuff. One of the first things I tried last year was like, give me some data that represents like a body pose or a hand pose or whatever. And it was like, oh, just set everything to 0. Like, I don't know. It didn't, the model didn't understand enough. That's fine. And then they made claims about open sourcing for Linux. The only reason I'm kind of talking about this in disclaimery way is just Apple has, in some previous times, made some claims of open sourcing some things and not followed through. So I haven't seen the project yet. I've been looking. So hopefully that will come. So that then the foundation models, that baseline reasoning for AI you could use and run on top of Linux in a server setting and use the same kind of code to Swift on the server and reason about things that way too. So this is kind of the breakdown of different models. There's models available on all the platforms now, right? Except TV. TV's not on this list. I don't know why. I'm guessing there's going to be a new Apple TV, and then that new Apple TV will get all of these benefits. But right now, what Apple's shipping for Apple TVs is maybe too old to run stuff, is my guess. And then all of the stuff supports images in. So they have an on-device 4K context window. That's sort of last year's model. The latest and greatest devices get a 8K context model, so there's an improved model. That's basically iPhone, the current iPhone, all the current iPhone, what are we on, 17 or 18? All of those normals and pros, and then last year's pros that are there for iPhones. iPads, it's like the M1, M4, and then I think one of the, it's the M4s that get that bigger model. And then the Vision Pro, there was a rev of the Vision Pro last year that replaced the M2 with an M5. And so that M5 gets this better on-device model. Max, it's anything with an M3 or newer. So a couple years back, that get that context. And then new this year, they're giving access to private cloud compute for developers to use, which is really cool. So private cloud compute was what they were using to drive their image playgrounds and stuff. So it's a cloud hosted situation. They've got all kinds of like security guarantees and everything's wiped and blah blah blah, all this stuff around that. But then you can sign up for that if you are in the small business program and you don't have any apps on your account that have more than 2 million downloads, first-time downloads, which I loopholed through with my Flashlight app because I actually changed companies, and so they didn't keep my old download count, so I'm still okay. So anyway, and then you can do the Core AI, which is a new framework to do kind of build your own Python toolchain. There's also some native tools, I think, as well. MLX is a way to run open weight models. Hugging Face is a website that has a ton of these models, and they're tagged up for which ones run on MLX, so that'll give you theoretically way better performance on device with the Apple's chips. And then cloud LLMs. So, and there's commitments, I think they're already out for at least Claude and Gemini and I think Codex that have the foundation models libraries that you can download to be able to interface with, to use them with this same foundation models API. That's the PCC stuff. So small business, nothing with more than 2 million. The way they're doing that is it's sort of on the user side. So your apps that are using private cloud compute, the users might end up with a message, or you can monitor where their situation is if they're getting close to their budget or whatever. So you can dynamically choose to, hey, let me not use your private cloud computer. Let me turn off this feature for now. because you're getting close to your budget. And then if they have iCloud Plus, they get a higher limit. I don't know if there's any real quantifiable thing from Apple on what those tiers are going to be, but it's going to be some kind of like time-based limit thing. So, so if you're doing private cloud compute, you need to account for that. FM command line. Okay. The app schema stuff. So when you're kind of giving the X-ray of your app for Siri to be able to understand your app and work with it, the new thing this year is this app schema idea. So you basically say like, hey, my app serves a messaging function. And then that app schema has a protocol interface in other languages that says, hey, if you're a messaging app, okay, these are the couple of things that you need to support. You need to give me a list of people you can message. You need to give me a list of messages that you've sent, and then a send message action. And then you conform to those, and then now Siri knows how to interact with your messages app, because then it can say, oh, yeah, read me my new messages, or send a message, or whatever, right? So there's a variety of these different schemas that they already have that are standardized for Siri. So it's kind of, in a way, goes back to the original app intent stuff. If you've been around that long, of like, hey, here's the 8 different things that you can say that your app does, and Siri can talk to it. But so we're kind of replaying that story a little bit right now. I'm guessing that in future years we'll get either more of these schemas, or just like, yep, just define your schema and like the AI will figure it out or something. But for now, it's a decent amount of things. The other way you do that for on-screen stuff, so Siri knows what people are looking at, is there's this app entity identifier that's in the Swift UI code. So that's your declarative UI. So as you're building out your UI, you put the app entity identifier with it to say, okay, this is the unique thing that this represents. So this one is a person X, or a message from message ID number 24, whatever it is. So that's the way that you kind of bridge that stuff up and make it available so that Siri can see those things. I just realized we're almost at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to keep going, but I also...
Do you want to do a 5-minute speed run of anything?
Yeah, I think I can do that.
You think you wanted to get to? Because we started a little late. That's probably partially my fault.
No worries. But yeah, I just don't want to... okay, so platform refinement stuff. So this is your checklist. So if you're an iOS developer, like take a screenshot of this or whatever, or I'll give it to you. Like these are things to make sure you do for this year. So the state behavior thing is maybe subtle, but it could be a thing that really bites you. Basically what they did is they used to reassign state every time the SwiftUI view reloaded. So think of like a reactive thing, like it's sort of potentially redrawing the frame like every time some data changes or whatever. Now with 27, and if you build with Xcode 27, it goes back to whatever OS versions, the behavior. Now the behavior changes. It's one time for certain state assignments that it'll get set one time, and that's it. So the first time that SwiftUI view loads, one time done, it's assigned an initial value. So that could change, that could create some subtle bugs depending on how your SwiftUI was set up. So definitely look for that one. Liquid Glass we talked about. Make sure you're ready for that. If you haven't, if you were opting out, you got to deal with that. iPhone apps are resizable. This to me is the biggest clue that we're gonna probably get an iPhone that folds, because you can stretch an iPhone wider on an iPad. There's a ability to mirror your iPhone onto a Mac, and you can stretch that window wider.
With widgets too, right?
What's that?
With widgets as well too, right? I'm thinking something else.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just literally like the whole screen. I can pull it wider, and then the UI will adapt to that. So that's definitely a thing that you need to be checking out your app for. Like, I know my disk one that I just launched is going to break with that, for example. But anyway, Mac OS, this update this fall is only for Apple Silicon Macs. So Apple is like done with the Intel chips for Macs. And Xcode 27 is only on those also. UI scene, if you have old apps, that might hit you. And then these are a couple other things that are kind of like migrations. Most of them are like, oh, this is now a Swift thing, or something's deprecated. So, okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. To back.
Yeah.
Because you said, go back, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Xcode 27 is only Apple Silicon, but on the mobile devices, that goes back into their earlier chips fine.
So Xcode is the IDE that runs on the Macs. So it's just, hey, if you want to develop, if you want to develop for Apple, if I want to develop for Apple stuff now,
Yes.
I cannot buy an old Intel Mac, right? I gotta have a Mac that at least has an M1
I overdid
or an M something.
Yeah.
You're good. You're good. Yeah. Some other random features. I haven't looked into the details on the Bluetooth channel sounding, but that sounded interesting to me, of like you might be able to get precise distances from iPhones. This could be kind of fun. The stroke recognizer, I think that's the plumbing for that handwriting. Oh, there's 29 again, so I guess I was right. Oh, you're fine, yeah. I'll be sharing these too. Yeah. Game porting toolkit I haven't looked under the hood of that, but they kind of announced like a couple of really big games that are coming to the Macs. It's like theoretically it's a big upgrade in what they can support, and getting 3D stuff from Windows over to, or getting the latest game engines ported over. Touch controller API. Music understanding is interesting. So this gives you like an analysis of different instruments in the songs that it's working on. But to my so far, it looks like it won't work with Apple Music, because Apple Music is like encrypted format, not the raw stuff to protect copyright. So it's like, oh, you can use it on, if you've got an unencrypted, like a non-DRM version of a song, then you can use it on that music, or maybe take stuff in from the microphone and do it. But anyway, so it's an interesting API. Gives you a lot of detail. It's really cool. Some web stuff. I don't know if you got web people.
Customizable stuff is nice.
Yeah.
And wanted.
Okay, this is the what platforms they're supporting. So it's kind of the cutoff list. So tvOS, it's just the 4K second gen or newer. macOS, the M1. watchOS is the one with the biggest kind of cut list. So Series 9, Ultra 2, or SE 3 or newer. So that's a lot more devices than last year's cut. Maybe related to the AI stuff, but I don't know. And then iOS, it's like everything that ran 26 can run 27. So, okay. There's no good way for me to speed run this, so I'm just going to show you the slides and try to talk in as quick as I can.
Some map stuff.
Gaussian splats. So this is the like 3D stuff. So they have proper support for this 3D Gaussian splat technique, which is, it's basically like these translucent ovals to represent stuff instead of like a mesh and defining geometry. It's like put these magic floating ovals in, yeah, kind of like those are the pixels of this. And then all the stuff we got, cloth simulation, the physical space lighting I talked about, custom reverb mesh, so you can actually like assign things and say like, this is carpet, this is stone, this is wood, and it'll like make the sound right for the space. It's crazy. Light maps, navigation meshes, so you can actually like get pathfinding across 3D spaces. Level of detail, API, clipping component, I don't remember that. Foveated streaming is the ability to get like a Mac or PC to stream content to the Vision Pro, and then it takes into account where they're looking to say, okay, render this part high res, and save your pixels everywhere else, so that can be more blurry, which is what the device is doing, but they're making it a little more general for what that area is to try and protect your privacy. There's a ton of stuff that you can find out about a person, like a privacy violating stuff, if they have access to where how your eyes are moving in detail. So that's why Apple is never going to give that as an API. Happy to talk to you about that more if you want to know. Reality Composer 3 was like a whole new thing. It's basically like a game engine. It's literally they bought out a game engine and launched it as this project around this project. Script graph. So that's your actions as like a visual block component, plugging things together. USD kit, I'll call out as another thing. That's proper format for that 3D file format, a proper API for that. So it makes it easier to export and write things to USD and deal with that. And the spatial preview is a nice thing. So if you're making a Mac app, it's like all just built in to be able to make a Mac app and like just put some 3D content onto a Vision Pro. So you don't have, there's a lot of plumbing and stuff that you had to do to make that happen and deliver another app or whatever. And it's just like, yep, one API, done. Okay, that is my presentation.
Okay, yeah, we can stop here. If there is anything you had extra, I can stay and record it, but we can maybe stop in case anyone has to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe we can give you a round of applause now.
So yeah, happy to stay and chat on any of it if you have questions.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The headphones, Max.
AirPods Max.
Pro 2 with the chip, I forget what it's called.
AirPods Pro 2, 3, and then the AirPods Max.
Things they're going to add because of the new chip, like the instant translations and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, there's an instant translations with the latest AirPods Pro.
Yeah.
That I was trying to use for a minute with the World Cup games, because the only way I could get live games was on Telemundo with my particular combination of streaming stuff. So I tried that out for a minute, and it wasn't. I didn't crank up the TV or anything, so it was okay. But I'll have to try it more with
Gotcha.
either a real person or somebody more directly talking to.
Developing an application with your, like say you have a game with your spatial sound, whatever.
Yeah. The audio reverb.
What do you get with the Max?
Yeah, you should.
Can you do something to it?
Yes, you should be able to. The custom reverb mesh is not a Vision OS only. Most of that slide, the Reality Kit slide, most of this is Mac OS and iOS and Vision OS.
But
by the way,
Maxes don't have head positioning relay like the Sony's do, so I don't think you can even do what I'm thinking anyway. So I might just be on that.
No, you can. So if I have my AirPods Pros in. And I'm watching something on an iPad, and I turn my head, I'll hear the sound in my left ear.
Okay.
Like it is so good that like I constantly, like at night I'll be doing this and making sure that I'm not like disturbing people. I will do this. So I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's just coming from these. Like it's not actually that. Like it feels like it's coming from the device.
Okay, so it does have.
So there is enough sensors in the latest ones that it's aware of that, and it'll pin the sound spatially that way, and then you can do plenty more with that, and then that's really if you're gonna code for Vision OS and do an immersive experience. Sound is a huge part of making that experience feel real, and it really is in that platform in that way. The apps that make the most sense for that are like more almost emotional apps, because there is something very different to that platform and there's been studies like people remember an immersive experience as like a brain memory and not as a thing that they watched or observed or something. Like it's actually stored in a different way in their brain. So like,
Kind of like in the olden days.
think about that if you're trying to target those platforms. Like, make it consider that you're actually giving your user a new memory, and like treat it with that amount of care, because you have that much power over people. Like it's, I have terrified myself because I had a butterfly, animated butterfly, and it was like 10 times the size, and then it's coming at me, and I was just like, like I couldn't sleep that night. It was anyway.
Vision OS experiment you made?
That was a Vision OS thing, yeah.
Well, and in the old, when you're teaching people in the olden days, before our times, it was, if you tell them, they'll maybe remember, but if it's in print, if it's on paper, it's important. Well, that's completely nonsense now, because papers become cheap.
Yeah.
And so it's a way to access that.
A level of experience.
mental importance.
Yeah.
That's not good. Well, okay.
Okay. But yeah, the bottom line of it is you can definitely do lots of spatial stuff, and that reverb just makes everything play out more for what the space is. The way that works is you set different meshes, so you can actually say like, I don't necessarily care about the feet of this table, right? I can just set the plane of the wood, and then like that's maybe that and the walls is enough to define my space. And that'll create the effect that you want or whatever. They had a couple of presets. It was like hallway or like open area or whatever, but now it's like super
Like I
custom.
said, even if you're creating a website with an immersive backdrop, and you add all the things together, you start having a lot at your disposal.
So the distinction there is there's three things that I want to make sure to separate. So a native app, right, built with all the tools, that's where custom reverb mesh lives. There's the immersive backgrounds that we talked about. That's a like particular tag, like a model tag, and it's something more custom than that. I don't have it off the top of my head. But spatial scene or something like that you put in. And that is one other piece. And then there's like the WebXR sort of standards that Safari also has some support for, which allow you to like ask for and get, some representation of the hands and some representation of their head position and a few things, but not all the things.
Yeah.
So in that environment, I don't think there's the custom reverb in either of those two, like web-only things. I think it's only in the native, but yeah.
Sandboxing kind of ideas and so forth. But
I mean,
they all start converging.
You can do a whole lot with the WebXR, and Apple gets lots of feedback. And if that's a space that you're playing in, like, I would encourage you to fill out. Like, Apple has a feedback thing on their developer account, and like, if there's stuff that's in your way, like, put it in there, because the way I imagine, I don't know, the way I imagine people working in Apple, it's like they have a giant pile of feedback that they get all the time, and so like the more that this thing keeps recurring, the better that helps them like pull it out as an important thing that they should work on.
Build a case,
So-
gives their manager.
Yes.
This is now.
We have 10,000 people saying this versus 5, right? Like it's easier to, because everybody's got to make trade-offs. Apple, as I understand it, is sort of famous for working in really small teams. Like there are way fewer people than you would imagine in charge of any one like thing in the company. So it's kind of like they do only have so much time and attention to put to stuff. So yeah. Anyway, that's my soapbox for trying to be a good developer and fill out those feedbacks that it actually does make a difference. So even if you don't individually get much responses for it, I got a couple things turned over and fixed this year, and that's always a fun. It's like, hey, go look at this. We think we fixed it. All right, cool.